Without systems in place to help you fill your newfound free time and a plan to create a supportive sober tribe, recovery from alcohol addiction can feel really boring and lonely. The good news is it doesn't have to be that way. All you need to do is some creative planning and a bit of mustering up some courage, and you'll find that recovery is actually intensely rewarding. But without any direction, it can be hard to know where to start. In this week's episode of Through the Glass Recovery podcast, we are chatting with Brenton, Charles, and Josh about how they've filled up the free time that sobriety gave them and how they've built up a support system that keeps them accountable and provides them with the connection we all need when we decide to create a life that is free from alcohol.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Steve and Julie. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full, there's no space left for alcohol.
In this episode, Josh talks about the Monday night Through the Glass Recovery meetings, which are a great place to meet some new people online that will share this recovery journey with you. We would love to have you join us. Just visit our website at throughtheglassrecovery.com to get all of the login info. All right, welcome everybody. So nice to see you. I get to hang out with the guys today, which is always like super cool because it doesn't seem to happen very often. It is honestly, it's sometimes really hard to find sober dudes who are willing to show up and actually talk about stuff. So I always enjoy stuff like this. Thank you guys all for being here. We are going to start with introductions as we always do, and then we'll dive into what's going to be an awesome conversation. I'm going to let Brenton go first because he's done this once before. So do you want to start us off, Brenton?
Sir, yeah, absolutely. Honored to be back, guys. This is so cool. My name is Brenton. I'm the founder of Office Recovery on Instagram, and I've been sober now 934 days. So that's my timeline there. So just 2.5 years or so, and yeah, founded Office Recovery just in the hopes of bringing some laughter, some healing, some hope to the recovery space. A lot of us can speak to the fact that recovery, sobriety, this whole journey it's tough enough as it is. And so if I can help people kind of, learn to laugh or even smile for a moment and kind of take that next step forward in their journey, whatever that looks like, then I feel like I've done my job. So that's who I am. Yeah. And I'm super stoked to be back on. Thank you guys.
Awesome to have you back.
Really happy to have you back. And definitely for our listeners, make sure you guys check out the show notes. I'm going to have a link to Brenton's Instagram there. And for sure, check it out because those are some great laughs. We always really appreciate the stuff that you do. So yeah, thanks for being back. Next, I'm going to have Charles go. How are you?
I'm great. Name is Charles. I've been sober for almost 5 years. 5 years, February 19th. That's so real, like right in the height of COVID. So it was a different experience for me getting sober right at that point because everything started out as normal. I went through detox, but as soon as I got out of detox, everything shut down. So it was a different like weird process. But I'm a father of I have two adult children, a son and a daughter. I have a granddaughter that is 2 years old. Been a postal worker for 20 years. And I really got big into like social media as far as like sobriety, because I'm a shy and quiet guy. So when I went to AA meetings and they talked about doing service work, I was always kind of slow about doing things. And someone was like, "Well, you do work out and you got your own stuff on there. Why don't you just start posting and you can kind of slip into sobriety?" And it kind of took off from that point, and just now I post more about sobriety than I do about fitness. And I get a lot of feedback, and it just like kind of like encourages me. And I think that's been a big part of keeping me sober is that I don't want to let so many people down. I feel like I got, so many people got my back, and I'm helping other people at the same time, and it's been really big with my sobriety.
I love how you've used social media to help you with being shy and like the service work part. That is really cool.
It is. That's brilliant, and I think that that's super inspirational. I love how much you connect with your audience. So it's really neat to get to have you here and get to hang out with you and talk to you a little bit. I'm happy you're here.
Okay.
And last but not least, we've got Josh.
Hey guys, thanks a lot for having me on. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys. My name's Josh. I'm 52 years old. I'm from Wisconsin, but I've lived in Virginia for almost 20 years now. I'm in construction. I started out as a little kid helping my dad out. He was a bricklayer, and so I learned all about that trade growing up and through high school and college, working in the summers. And now I'm actually in the office working for a large commercial masonry contractor, doing estimating and project managing. I'm married to my wife. We've been married for about 18 years, and we do not have kids, but we bought a place out in the country a few years back and enjoy that aspect of the country living. We have some goats and chickens and a big garden, and really enjoy that. Um, I was I've been a daily drinker I was a daily drinker for over 30 years, and the last 5 or 6 years, I could really tell that it was taking a toll on me. I could tell I was drinking more and more and starting to black out more, and, it was, really a problem that I could see. I just didn't know what to do about it. So, after a scary emergency room visit a few years ago, I, decided that I really needed to do something to change, but I was afraid to go public, like have to go to for me to say have to go to AA, but at the time that's what it felt like, and make it public that people knew that I drank too much, because like a lot of us, outwardly in my work circles and my friends and things like that, I just seemed like a normal guy that liked to drink, especially being from Wisconsin. Everybody drinks in Wisconsin, or I shouldn't say everybody, but most people when I was growing up, and most people drank every day. It wasn't that uncommon. So yeah, being a little nervous to go out and try to find sobriety, I actually went on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Josh_quits_2023, because it was spring of 2023 when I knew I had to do something. So I started going on Instagram and looking at all the inspirational quotes and looking for some support, and really thought I could get through this on my own. And I had spurts and fits of quitting drinking for a few weeks here, a few weeks there. I think that August I quit for about 60 days, but I just never could figure out how to quit for good. So in February of 2024, which is about a year ago in 3 days, um, I contacted Julie with Through the Glass, and then asked her if she could give me some coaching. So she coached me for 12 weeks, and along with that coaching was a support group online, and also Monday evening meetings with Through the Glass that I attended. And I really do attribute me being able to quit for good to having that support with Julie giving me coaching and giving me what I called homework, assignments to write in my journal with every morning. And it really helped keep me accountable too, because those first, few weeks, couple months, that's why I signed up for 12 weeks. I'm like, I really think if I can get through 12 weeks, I can make it. So I knew that I didn't want to let Julie or the community with Steve and the Monday night meetings down. So that's what I did. And like I said, as of Wednesday,
Sushi and every sour the southern.
Cool. I'm so excited that you're hitting a year. Yeah. No, that's amazing. We're super, super happy that you are hitting a year. You have come such a long way. And for sure, it's been such an honor to be a part of your journey with you. And I'm so glad that Instagram connected us. I think everybody here is from Instagram, which is so cool. The internet, for all the downside that social media has, it sure does do a great job of connecting people that just, helping people find what it is that they're needing. So really, really happy to have all three of you with us today. Um, so for our topic, what the hell do I do with my time and how do I make new friends? So this is definitely a little bit different than our usual topics, but it seems like every time we open Instagram or we open Facebook, we see people asking these two questions. Sobriety can definitely feel very lonely and very boring in the early days. So, you have all this time freed up, and then a lot of times you have to leave your social life behind too. So, our question today for you is, how did you get through this lost feeling in early sobriety? How did you fill up all that time, and how did you go out and meet new people?
I guess I'll kick it off. Yeah, so my experience, I came through the detox and the treatment center route. Like that's kind of the route that my sobriety journey started. And it was within there that I started developing community and friends in sobriety. And those friendships have stuck around. I mean, for the last 2.5 years, we still stay in touch. We still check on each other regularly. There's just a really awesome connection I think that you make with people, especially in early recovery or early sobriety, where you're kind of two kindred, souls, right, on the same journey. Like the destination's the same for most of us. The paths might, look a little bit different, the ways that we get there, but the destination's going to be the same thing, and that's going to be not just pure abstinence, but really creating and crafting a life that you don't want to run from. You're creating a life where you want to like enjoy and fall in love with, and so building friendships, coming out of the treatment center for me looked a lot like connecting up with those guys and constantly checking in and staying in touch with them. I did the AA route as well, especially early on, and I still go to meetings when I can. But early on, just being and stepping into those, they call it like the rooms of recovery, where you step into these rooms filled with people that there's this kind of just this intangible sense of everybody gets it. Everybody understands to some degree what I've been through, where I'm going, what I'm experiencing right now. And there's something absolutely beautiful, I think, about walking into those rooms and knowing that everyone looks at you. And for one of the first times in my life stepping into a space where there wasn't any judgment, there was no like looking at me sideways, there was just this kind of open acceptance, like, hey, we're with you. We've got your back. We've been there. And that was really cool. And so like out of all of that is where friendships started to form for me. And then once I hopped on the social media train about a year or so into my recovery journey, the sober community online, specifically on Instagram for me, has been absolutely enormous with their support and just with their encouragement. And even, I've connected with folks enough to where they feel comfortable enough to challenge me on things, which is when you've made like a real friend, right? Like they can actually push back on you and be like, shape up, dude. So those kinds of connections have been absolutely incredible. And for the longest time, I was the biggest proponent of the whole concept of social media isn't real. Like that, those aren't real friends. Those aren't real connections. I've actually shifted significantly from that because I'm like, no, actually these relationships that I've made, um, specifically on Instagram, I mean, there's some of the dearest and most treasured conversations I've had with people, the most real conversations. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I know if I hit the Midwest, I'm visiting so and so and I'm going to check in on this person. And and those, I mean, that's real friendship right there. And so for me, building friendship has looked like getting out of my comfort zone and stepping into spaces where I know I'm going to be uncomfortable, but also recognizing probably most of the people there are also uncomfortable, and there's a really cool way that that connects people, I think. And so if you have the courage to speak up and, say hi, say my name is, and let's do this thing together, you'll find friendships, form just around that core fact alone. And then you start to build deeper and deeper relationships with people that you may have other kind of tangential connections with. But yeah, that's kind of been my track to friendship, and in the sober journey, if that all makes sense.
So I'm gonna echo what you said about the online friendship because I love that you brought that up. I was the same way. Like the internet friends aren't real. Like it's like they're not real, right? And I would even tell my kids like, get off Facebook. That's not really. Get out there and go hang out with the in-person friends, right?
Yeah.
And so my closest friendships are all people that I've met online in Zoom meetings, primarily, and in like my online sober community. And you develop the coolest, most meaningful friendships. And I mean, Steve and I met online. Like that's how we that's how we met was in a Zoom room. And then together we have traveled all over this nation at different times, different road trips, things like that. Just finally getting to go hug these people in real life. And it is so cool to take that from like the 2D world into 3D and like actually sit down and have a cup of coffee in the kitchen that you saw on Zoom for 3 years, you
Mhm.
know? But those are the most precious friendships that I've ever had. They're the most real and authentic friendships I've ever had. And they all started out 2D and most of them, that's the only way we've ever hung out. So I think it's really important just to validate that you can get almost everything you need socially on the internet. For me, I'm really rural. Like I live an hour away from the closest grocery store. I live in a town of 300 people. There's just not a lot of folks around me to make friends with. And so the internet was my option. That was it. And it has actually served me really well and really filled that loneliness space that I felt early on. So love that you made that point, Brenton, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a really unique way in which you can be vulnerable online with people that I think there's hurdles in real life that you kind of have to cross before you feel like you can be vulnerable with, folks in real life. And so I think there's, this cool way of being able to be vulnerable quickly with folks in the online community. And then what you obviously quickly find out is that vulnerability often is the foundation for such deep relationships. Like that's a requirement for depth in relationships of any type. And so to be able to approach folks online, whether you're, being vulnerable in the things that you post or even just in the conversations you have with people, being vulnerable like that quickly can sound really scary, I think, to a lot of people. But I think there's a unique kind of easing into it through the online community, and then that kind of really builds the relationship. So, and yeah, you get to a point where you're like, each other's schedules. Like, oh, hey, it's your year, of sobriety coming up. Let's celebrate this and just blast it all over, social media and have everybody rally and cheer. And like, who doesn't want to be a part of something like that where, you're actually valued and celebrated and encouraged, and that's such a cool thing. And to find that online is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I was going to touch on the time aspect of it a little bit. So, like most adults, I guess, I work, I have a job, and every day for so many years, it was kind of the same thing. We're creatures of habit. And as creatures of habit, you know, I would get off of work, hop in my car, start thinking about having that drink, maybe even if it was a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday or maybe any other day, I would probably stop at the store on the way home and get my box of wine or a 12 pack of beer or both if it was a Friday, and have a cocktail on the way home or something. And knowing that I couldn't do that anymore was really hard. So I'd try to listen to some podcasts in the car on my way home, and if I was really getting strong urges, which I tended to do, I remember a few times knowing where that turn lane was for the store where I'd stop, and a few times I'd miss it, and a mile later I'd do a U-turn and turn around and go to that store because I was craving alcohol that bad on the way home because I was thinking about it so much, I think, and thinking about, what am I going to do if I don't have alcohol when I get home? It's just going to suck. So yeah, those first few days I had to, or those first few weeks and months, I should say, I had to replace that with habits. Like I said, we're creatures of habit. So that was a time when I just had to learn that new routines. And I really think those routines really, really, really help with people in early sobriety. Just doing those things every day, and after a while, you really start to come home and say and enjoy doing that. Oh, I can come home and I get to take my dog for a walk, and your brain starts thinking about these other things.
We have a question the drink, Josh.
Yeah.
Because I know you a little bit, when it comes to the aspect of like making friends and doing some of those other things with your time, you play an instrument.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you reached out to people on a whim to get together and do what?
Well, actually, some of the last couple meetings I had with Julie, we talked about hobbies and interests and things to do with your time. And I was telling Julie that, I live out in the sticks too, so it's kind of hard for me to make friends. And I think you said this once, Steve. I had one strike against me living out in the sticks, two strikes against me. I'm 50 some years old, which is fucking hard to make friends at that age as it is. And then my third strike, I just quit drinking. So between all three of those things, I had no idea how I was going to meet anybody. So Julie actually said, "Well, think about some of those things you enjoy to do and start doing those. Maybe you could get involved with some groups, and in your nearest town and do that." So I thought about it and thought about it, but yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, I had always played saxophone. I was in blues bands and rock bands and stuff when I was younger. And yeah, just decided to put my name on the Craigslist and said, "Hey, 50-year-old sax player looking to get back into playing again." And within 3 days, I had 6 or 7 offers of people asking me to try out with them and things like that. And yeah, so jammed with a couple guys, and actually just this past Saturday night, I played about 4 hours in a smoky bar called Bubba's, and with a classic rock band. But I had such a good,
Oh,
awesome. That's very cool. I had a year at this point, so I didn't mind the smoking really. The clothes smelled like shit when I got home, but yeah, and at this point I can deal with people drinking around me. So yeah, I had a blast just getting out and meeting some people and
it-
playing my music. So that's one example of what you can do. Find your hobbies that you used to do, before, if you're just if you're just starting out.
It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there like that. Your story about putting yourself out there on Craigslist reminds me, I don't get on Reddit very often at all. It's not like my thing, but I had searched for something and you know how the Reddit answers come up in Google. So I clicked on that and then I had a little I wasn't even a notification. It was like, you know, my feed on Reddit. Anyway, I have like a local town Reddit subreddit. And the first post that was there was like, okay, 42-year-old dude going back to school, looking for, enjoys gaming and hiking and whatever, just looking for friends new to the area. And Steve at this point had just moved here and is a 42-year-old dude who loves hiking and just went back to school and all of this. And it was like, Steve, you need to send Scam a message. Like, I found you a friend on Reddit. And this guy has turned into such a close friend of both of ours now because he had the guts to just put it out there like a freaking classified ad, right? I mean, that's what that is. It's not necessarily like long walks on the beach and whatever, but I thought it was so neat that he had the guts to do it and that Steve had the guts to reach out to him and then everybody had the courage to get together for a game night. And now, he's a really close friend. So I guess I think it sounds so scary and kind of weird, but making friends this day and age is hard. And so what you did, Josh, and what our friend did, I think it's a brilliant way to reach out and just find people with common interests. Charles, I'm gonna give you the floor. What do you got for us, dude?
Okay, for me, just like this meeting friends and like finding stuff to do, it kind of went hand in hand. Um, I had already had a passion for fitness, but I wasn't really doing anything with it when I was drinking. So it's like as soon as I like got sober, it was like I started hitting the gym. And I just once I started going more and more, I got more into it and I wanted to learn more about it. So I took classes to become a personal trainer and actually got a job working at a gym. So I stayed busy like around the clock with my regular job and personal training. But I also got to meet so many people, just new clients coming in. And I started making friendships. And with my other job, it crossed over because people was like, oh, they was asking me questions about what I'm doing. And I was like, well, I'll bring you in the gym. So I started getting new gym partners from work, people who I didn't really even talk to that much at work, but just started building relationships. And I still have people now that I don't necessarily train them. They just gym partner. We meet up Mondays to go to the gym. And so that just like the gym for me was like keeping me sober, but I also made friends off of it. Um and now it's a big part of my routine. Before I was using gym to kind of fill time as well. Like I'll get off from work, like Josh said, the witching hour, I'll get off at like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm glad I had Planet Fitness when they opened back up because I would get off and go to the gym 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been tired from work, but it was just I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to go home and just be able to rest. My mind would be thinking about, okay, what can I do now? What can I do now? I need something to drink. So with that gym and then like also from the gym, I started videoing and stuff. And that brought up a new hobby of just trying to create content and taking a camera. I started going outside in nature with it more. And it's funny. I mean, I can be out at the park and have a camera set up, and people be like, "Oh, you a YouTuber?" And I'm like, "No," because I mean, I don't think of it as being like a big deal. It's just something that I like to do. But I've met people out at the park, and it's just conversations. They might not necessarily be a friend, but it's just I've gotten more comfortable with like meeting people outdoors or just out of the way and just talking. Before I had to have to have a drink. I mean, I couldn't talk about going and talking to someone without having a drink. And I eventually got to the point where I felt comfortable going out. So I had an old passion of singing, and I started going to karaoke. Started going back to karaoke. Before karaoke was just a place to get drunk, and I wouldn't drink until after I had a few drinks in me. But I do it every now and then now, and I see a lot of people I used to drink with, and by now they all know my story. So they'll be like, "Oh, make sure you get him a Coke or something." They always like they're trying to protect my sobriety too. That's amazing. Yeah, they be on it. They were like, "Okay, make sure you get something to drink," and they'll get a soda or something. But yeah, it's it's just like relearning to do things that you already love and doing them sober, and just be amazed at how many people, when they notice that change in you, that, you're going to gravitate to, whatever you like. You're going to meet people in that particular field or hobby or interest. And I've met so many new people, and in some of the old people who I used to hang out with, they said they looked at me and decided to get sober. I've had quite a few friends that I used to hang out with, and like it kind of rubbed off on them as well.
Is it not like the coolest, craziest rush to do karaoke sober?
It's really nervous. I mean, you really get to feel all that nervousness.
Oh God,
I took Steve for the first time. Go ahead, Steve.
there's was the first time in Kansas.
Some random little bar in
Was
like
in
Kansas, Lawrence,
Okay.
Topeka. Yeah.
Yeah, Topeka, Kansas. That's what it was. It was in Topeka, Kansas. We were driving from North Carolina back to Colorado because we went to North Carolina to visit sober friends. That's what we were doing from the community that we were in. We met how many people, Julie? Like 25?
25. It was like a
Something
group
like
of
that?
25 people that got together in North Carolina. Yeah.
At a KOA campground in North Carolina. But anyways, so we were on our way back, and it got quiet in the car. We're driving along. Not too often it was super quiet. Anyways, Julie's over there kind of snickering in the passenger seat. And I'm like, what are you looking at? She's like, oh, just karaoke. She's like, do you want to do karaoke?
It was like Bob's Bar and Grill. I was like,
Yeah.
Bob's Bar and Grill in
Yeah,
Topeka,
yeah.
Kansas has karaoke on Thursday nights. Do you want to go?
And it's like 45 minutes down the road. And I'm like, sure, why not? Because it's way easier to say yes before you get to the bar and then you try and pick a song, right? It's just way easier to say, yeah, right? I'm being the tough guy. I'm being the, like, I won't be afraid of this shit. Yeah, sure, let's go and do karaoke. I'm terrified inside. Like, terrified.
Steve was like freaking out.
Oh.
It was funny.
I
And he gets grumpy when he's freaking out. So he was like all snippy. Sorry, go ahead.
was. No, she's not wrong. Anyways, I was like, okay, no one's gonna be here. It's a Thursday night or something. Like, it's gonna be fun. The place was packed. It was packed. Anyways, it took me a little while to pick a song. I picked a song. I got up there. That is as terrifying as it is. Like the rush you get after, it's equal. It's equal to how terrifying it is. And since then, I've done karaoke now like 3 times, and it's still. I have the one song, and that's it. Under the Bridge. Is it Under the Bridge? Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers. That's my song. That's the one that I just pick and I go out and I belt it out. But anyways, yes, karaoke is one hell of a rush. Like that, the adrenaline that you get from that is like second to none. It's got to be like jumping out of a plane. Same sort of feeling.
I think it's really quick, and then I'll let you have it back. I think it's really important for people in recovery to find those little adrenaline rushes, because we end up missing a little bit of that, right? And there's, for a lot of us, it was like this is gonna sound terrible, but I think you guys will know what I'm talking about. Like, there's the getting away with it aspect where, and that gives you a certain amount of adrenaline, and I know a lot of people actually miss that. And if you can find healthy ways to get an adrenaline rush, like karaoke or like, some of the adventure stuff that I like to do or whatever it is, that actually is really helpful and fills a certain void that a lot of us find that we have. So definitely recommend looking for that. Okay, Steve, you can have it back now. Sorry.
Okay, so like finding friends, and it's hard because it's vulnerable, because especially in the earlier days when I'm not sure how to show up in a friendship or a relationship anymore, and I'm still trying to figure out who the heck I am. I'm still taking shit way too personally, so I can't take a joke. There's a lot going on, but I found, like, the more I found myself, the easier it got to be vulnerable, like Brenton was saying, and the easier it got to just go out and do something. And the hardest part is getting your ass out of the house and putting yourself in a space where you don't know nobody, don't know anybody, and you're the new guy, whether it's an AA meeting, because I started out in AA, but it was right in the middle of the pandemic, so there was nothing in person. Got together and played hockey a little bit, but you go and pick your passion, pick something that you like, and then put yourself in that environment. And I think that's where you find those people. And you've all explained exactly that. You've all shared exactly that. You've grabbed onto a passion, and then you've met people that have the same sort of passion. And so the people that I've met online, there's risk involved. Like, none of it is easy, and I think that's the hardest part when you hear people like, I'm bored, I don't have any friends, I don't have any of that. There's risk involved. There is inherent risk. There's if I'm gonna reach out to Brenton and and we find out that we don't align, and then he stops talking to me, like, I risk that that I risk the rejection. I risk the not feeling good enough. I risk not feeling like fitting into the group. And I think we have to understand that finding new friends isn't going to be it was never something comfortable for me. Not at the beginning. It wasn't a comfortable thing. It's not like I just walked out there and they gravitated to me. I had to show up, and I had to be me, and I had to be scared about it. I had to be awkward about it. I had to face the rejection because I carried my own baggage too. And inside of that baggage was people didn't hang around for very long. I would make a quick friend, and then that quick friend would have enough of me because I was too much. And then that person would fall away, and I never really had these long friendships. It's probably a me problem. And it's something that I need to look into, because there's no way that I'm going to run into that many people that aren't going to reflect something different back if I'm the one that's the problem. So figuring that part out and learning how to show up and learning how to, Brenton, you talked about it, is get to that deeper level. Friendships hang around when you start getting to the deeper level and you start sharing. When I started sharing who I was, what I was about, and that's the risky part, right? It's the risky part. Because if I start sharing who I am and the pieces of me that I was formerly really scared about sharing and wearing those masks, I was never going to achieve a relationship that I was looking for by showing up in a fake way. Like, that's my responsibility, and I think that's important. Is I need to take that responsibility, accept that it's going to be a little bit scary, and just move through that. And I've found some really, really amazing connections and great friendships. Doesn't have to be a lot, but I don't know. To me, it's been worth it. Like you mentioned, the friend of ours that we just recently met because he had the courage to write a post, and we had the courage to respond and say, hey, let's get together. And he was like, okay, I'm going to go over to a strange person's house and play some board games. Like, and now we see him every other weekend. And so,
Did he post that he was a sober guy?
no,
He wasn't sober.
and he wasn't sober. It just so happened that when he showed up at our place and none of us were drinking, he was like, this is something I actually need to do. And so he's just over 90 days sober now. Like he literally had a drinking problem. He had a problem he needed to work through, and
Your Honor.
he was like, this is a great group. And
Like, we hang out and we drink non-alcoholic beer, and we would love to have you hang out with us. And he was like, wow, this is perfect.
yeah,
So cool.
kind of wild.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. And Steve, to like your point, I think that one of the questions I think that are kind of on our agenda, right, is like, what do we do now? Like, how do we make friends? What do we do now? And I think that I think you kind of alluded to this or it made me think of coming into early sobriety and early recovery, like being able to figure out and find yourself so that you can then begin to show up in your life in a way that's authentic. That's a super buzzy word right now, but
Yeah.
you show up in a way that's authentic, that's real to like yourself and who you are, and that takes time to figure out. And to be honest, it takes the risk. It takes like getting out there, because then you kind of discover, oh, this is how I actually communicate. This is how I talk to people. This is, and all the way down to like silly things like, this is how I stand when I'm in a circle of people, and am I comfortable in my own skin standing this way? And for me, one of the reasons that I dove so heavily into drinking was because I thought that I needed to show up a certain way. I thought that I needed to appear more confident, more funny, more intelligent. Ironically, I thought I needed to show up a certain way for people to then accept me and like me and want to be my friend. And the the amazing like paradox and all that is, in recovery and going through the work and like doing the hard work, right? Like for me, that's look like going to a therapist. That's look like journaling and doing all this internal work, to where I could discover like who I actually am and be okay with that, and actually love who I am. So I show up a certain way. The paradox is, as I've now shown up as Brenton, um, friendship has happened a lot more naturally, and folks have, not that they've gravitated to me, but there's no more worry about like, ooh, what did they think? Did they like me? How did I, when I said that, how did that come off? Like, I don't worry about that anymore, because I'm like, you're either gonna like me or you're not gonna like me.
Mm-hmm.
I like me, and I like you, and so if you like me, cool, we'll get along. Like, um, and so I think like, in the question of what do you do now is like, figure out what it looks like to figure out who you are, and who you are without alcohol. And that can look different for for different people. But take the time and really take the care for yourself to figure out who you are, how you want to show up, and learn to kind of look in the mirror and be good with that. And then as you step out into those like super vulnerable spaces, like doing karaoke, um, it's going to be terrifying, but there's also this like really cool undercurrent of strength that's like, I could, sing this song and completely blow it and get booed off stage. And I'm gonna still like have this smile on my face as I step off stage,
Yeah.
because like I did it. Like I just did something hard, something awkward, something crazy, and but I'm cool. Like I know who I am when I walk out that door, and like people's perceptions of me, people's response to me doesn't change who I am at my core. I think that's a huge thing to do in early sobriety. If you can figure out what that looks like, and some of what that looks like to figure it out is stepping into those spaces to kind of help you figure it out. Yeah.
You said something there, and when you're talking about finding friends and learning the authenticity piece. Well, I feel like for me, anyways, I needed other people's reflection of me reflected back to me, so I could see the good stuff in me that I was so blind to, and without putting myself out there, I was never gonna get that back. So I felt so broken down and beat down that when someone gave me a compliment, it cut like a knife. And that was hard. Like, there's no way that you can see that in me because I can't see that in myself. And it took other people to have the courage to say the things that I needed to hear to help me break out of my own shell.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I guess that's the risk part,
Yeah.
right? That's always the risk part. But I needed the reflection of me seen through other people's eyes.
Yeah.
To help me through.
Yeah. And for me, it also looked a lot like choosing to believe that what they said was true. Because like somebody might give me a compliment, and my natural instinct is to be like, oh, that's super nice of you to say, but you don't really mean that. Like, you don't really mean it. And that's an internal thing, right? Because that's my own perception of myself and why they would say that. So learning, like literally forcing my brain to accept their compliment and internalize that as truth, goes a long way in helping kind of solidify that foundation of I'm actually like an okay person, and like they actually meant that, and it's actually true. And that's just like a little, you know, building stone in that foundation that you're building on your reality of how you show up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it is risky. It's risky, and what's the saying? Like, without, no risk, no reward kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cliche for a reason, probably.
Right.
Yeah. Cliches are cliches for a reason. Got anything else, Charles?
No, I'm agreeing with Brenton. The part about taking compliments and stuff that really touched me. Like I felt that because I still struggle with taking these compliments, and I was just thinking of like for me, like if I get a compliment from a stranger, that's like okay, but when it's somebody I really know, I'd be like thinking, oh, they just trying to be nice, and I have to remind myself, it's still, it's I guess that's why they call it recovering because still you're still learning yourself and you learning things that's still a little off that about myself. And when he said that, I was like, I'm still doing that.
Julie does that all the time too. I'm gonna call her right out on that one.
I do. I'm so bad about it.
People say nice things. I'm like, no, they didn't mean that. They're just being nice. Oh, no, I feel that. So many of us we've like trained ourselves to see that and or to react that way. So yeah, just like Brenton said, you catch it and you're like, okay, wait, no, I'm not gonna just throw this compliment away this time. We've had some really cool conversations about compliments, both in our meetings and on the podcast, because they're actually really hard for a lot of people to accept. So yeah, you guys aren't alone by any means. That's a really common struggle for people.
One of the cool things. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, it's really hard when someone gives you a compliment, and I've said it, and I hear a lot of people say it all the time. Is when someone gives you a compliment, you say, "Oh, I just did this because I had to go here," or playing it down, or just not accepting that they are actually wanting to give you a compliment out of their kindness of their heart. And what I'm learning more is when someone does that is just to say, hey, thanks, thank you, thanks for that compliment. That you know that that means a lot that you said that. So
Somebody once described it as like somebody hands you a gift and you just take it and throw it on the ground. You're like, nah, I don't want that, right? And when that was explained that way to me, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to let this person just know that I appreciate that, instead of grabbing it and like wadding it up and throwing it away. And it's easier for me to accept compliments when I look at it from that perspective.
graciously accept it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's absolutely what I was gonna say too. Like a really simple way to just honor people is by accepting their compliment and thanking them. Like, because on the flip side, they're risking themselves by saying that. They're putting themselves out there and being like, "Hey, I really appreciate what you did there," or whatever the compliment might be. They're risking themselves, and so you honor that by accepting it graciously, and then you know choosing to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool when it comes from those friendships that you've developed over time. I'm going to wrap this up here. Finding friends is hard. Like I said earlier, it takes risk. But I think we have so many different avenues today, like a Craigslist post, social media, throwing it out there. Hey, I'm going to go for a hike here. Does anybody want to join me? And I've seen that too. Going out, basically, all of you guys shared about a passion you have. Brenton, humor. Charles, you got right into fitness and working out. And Josh, you're playing the saxophone and you found some people. Like, that's all something that all of you love to do, that you've found a way to inject yourself into it that has created connection for you. And I think that's the lesson that I'm hearing from all of you guys, and you've all put yourself out there. So, like you said, Brenton, right at the beginning, hi, my name is, let's do this thing together.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And if somebody says no, it's not about you. That's just not where you're supposed to go. It's information. Use that information as information. Try somewhere else. Carry on. You're eventually going to find your people. It just happens. So I want to say thank you, Josh. Thank you, Brenton. And thank you, Charles. Really appreciate you guys coming in here and sharing your stories, sharing your experience. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
To our listeners, huge congrats for showing up for yourself this week. We're so glad you joined us. Be sure to drop us a follow on Instagram or Facebook so you can keep up with all the cool things that we're doing and get a steady supply of sober inspiration. We'll see you next week.